All right. Okay, so I think, yeah, okay, all right, we're recording. All right, um, so for those of you who are watching, I'm actually interviewing one of my previous students. His name is Symen. And so Symen well, actually, I'm going to let Symen kind of talk about how we got to know each other, and then we'll go from there. So Symen, why don't you introduce yourself and maybe tell everybody how we kind of met and how we got to know each other.
Yeah, so I'm Symen Gonsanowskis. I'm a second year student in Mount Royal for physical literacy. I met Aleem in my first semester of university taking effective learning. Uh, right from the bat, that his class drew me in. From the beginning, wasn't too sure going in because my advisor basically said like, oh, it's just an easy A class, like whatever. So I didn't have high expectations. But within the first class, I really got bought in because talking about mindset, talking about basically like thinking critically about how you could find success, that's really big with me. Like that really resonates with me. One of the things I constantly think about is like how to improve myself, how to get better. So that's why I really got bought into the class very early. I enjoyed the class throughout the whole time. Like I would every single class fully engaged. And then towards the end of the class, so like I'm a baseball coach. That's what I do for my job part time. I'm going into that field after university as well. And I thought that there's an opportunity here to improve my coaching, improve the ability of my athletes using the concepts I learned from you. So I asked Aleem, I was like, hey, I'd like to have a meeting and talk about how I can use this content in baseball and use it on training my athletes to get the best performance out of myself and my athletes as possible. And from there, kept in touch with Aleem, saw around the halls, and he became like my favorite prof, probably favorite teacher I ever had, honestly.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So that's
So
the story, yeah.
yeah, that's great. No, that actually means a lot. Um, so what I thought we would do today was just kind of, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit. And maybe what we can do is we can talk a little bit about school, but then we can also talk about other parts of your life that maybe benefited as well, right? So
Okay.
let's start off with something quite simple. This whole concept that we've been taught since we've been young, and that is, if you just work hard enough, you'll be successful, right? Like we've always been taught, just work hard, just work hard, work hard. But I kind of teach something different, don't I? And
100%.
and so, what do you think? And I know I'm putting you on the on the hot seat right now, but what do you think is wrong with that? Like when everybody says, okay, just work hard enough and you'll be successful. Like why don't I teach that? And why do you think that I disagree with that? Did you understand the whole concept behind that and all that?
I did because essentially there's a point where you can overwork yourself, overtrain yourself. When you're just constantly like going, 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 you're gonna tire yourself out. You're gonna wear yourself down. Like if you look at like I remember a couple days ago I was watching the NBA finals. Jimmy Butler played the entire game. At the end of the game, he was gassed. He did not sit on the bench at all. And it kind of goes the same way. Like if you keep pushing, 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 don't take any breaks, don't find the easier way to do things, you're gonna be gassed and your performance is gonna go right down. So you have to be able to think critically. You have to be able to think, how am I gonna get the best usage out of the energy that I have, right? So if you're able to do that, then you're achieving maximal results, putting in less effort because you're thinking about the possibilities of if I do things this way, I think I get it done better than if I just keep grinding, grinding, grinding. It really comes down to science too. Like it's just known that if you keep going, you're gonna gas yourself out, and
Yeah.
once you're gassed, nothing's happening.
Yeah. And we spend a lot of time at the university, and just it's just crazy how many students are feeling burnt out. They're feeling overwhelmed. They're feeling stressed out. And I'm assuming that you felt like that too.
Oh,
And
100%, I did, yeah.
all these students are overwhelmed and they're burnt out. And it's because they've been always told that just work harder and work harder and work harder. But the part that kind of scares me a little bit is that a lot of students, I think, they mean well and they want to do well at school, but the problem is they don't understand that they could be actually working hard in the wrong areas, right? So when that happens, then things start to get very, very difficult, because then what ends up happening is then and tell me if you found this, but then your confidence levels drop, your self-esteem drops, all these other factors, and you start seeing yourself in a very negative way if all you know is to work hard.
Oh, 100%. Like I remember last year about, I'd say probably when it started to snow, maybe like December-ish area, right? Like at final season, I just had so much coming in, work, and like I was waking up at like 5:30 a.m. and I wasn't getting home until about 11 p.m. Like I was just gone the entire day with work, training, school, everything. Obviously, it's taken a toll. So I was essentially forced to find ways, like school wise, to be successful in school with the minimal amount of, I guess, hard work I could do. And as weird as that sounds, but like I had to force myself to find those best strategies to be successful because I knew time wise, I did not have the time. Like I
Yeah,
was constantly telling myself, I wish I just had just one more hour in the day, just
yeah,
one
yeah,
more.
yeah. And
And
it's
it's like, so I had to find those ways, and being able to, once I actually like took a step back, thought about like I'm gonna plan my day out. I'm gonna think about if I use this hour effectively. Now I have maybe an hour for lunch, take a little break, come back an hour effectively. Break it down became so much easier.
yeah. So this is actually really good that you're saying this. So what are some tips you would share with students who want to work? Because I think what we're both talking about here is working smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. So, feel free to share stuff that you learn in my class or even other stuff that you came up with. But what are some things, like if you could share one or two things with some students to help them work smarter, what would you share with them?
I would say scheduling. That was probably the biggest thing that helped me. I would schedule my day the night before. Before I'd go to bed, I'd write down I'm gonna wake up at this time, leave my house at this time, get to school for this time, work on this for an hour, work on this for an hour, go to class, so on. And I found of me that really helped my motivation a lot because I felt structured. I felt that like I had a purpose, I had a plan, everything felt in order. And that's honestly like the one biggest, like I guess, strategy. That's what helped me the most is writing down planning because I felt that, how should I put this? I felt that when I'm organized, things come easier. And then when you're organized, you could find little places here and there, be like, oh, I actually kind of have half an hour here. I could work on this here. Oh, I have a little 15 minutes there. I could work on that there. And when you just feel organized for your day, organized for your life, you're just motivated. You want to finish it. Like you have this plan. It's like, well, it's planned out. I got to do this, right?
Yeah.
And that's just really what kept me going.
So what you just described was one of the assignments we did, right? Which is that setting up that weekly schedule, right?
Yeah, and I loved it. I continue doing it. I still do it.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool because when I teach people that weekly schedule, they're like, I don't want to do it and blah blah blah. But I'm glad you used it because you just described something really valuable, and that is you find blocks of time that are unused, right?
Hmm.
And it's interesting because during the day, we always have these little unused blocks of time, and we don't realize that if we don't actually have a big picture of where our time is going, we could actually waste those 15-minute blocks or those half an hour blocks. And what the reality is that those 15-minute blocks or those half hour blocks can actually save us so much time in the long run, right? Because
100%.
like half an hour of just focused work is like 1 hour of unfocused work, right? Or like 1.5 hours of unfocused work, right? So I'm glad you used that, and I'm glad that it helped you out a lot. Um, Another thing I wanted to ask you, actually, did you want to add anything else to that, or you're good?
No, that's probably good for that. Yeah.
Okay. So another thing I wanted to ask you, and I wrote some questions down here, is that a lot of times um, there's students who they have a lot of challenges outside of school, right? So they got challenges outside of school, they got work issues, they got distractions, maybe stuff is going on at home, which is very common, maybe financial issues and stuff like that. So I guess just based, as a student, what are some techniques and what are some things you could recommend to them? And at the same time, why is it important that students stay upbeat? Like, why is it important that they stay upbeat and optimistic, even though they're having some challenges?
Um, Staying upbeat and optimistic really is the biggest thing that drives me personally. Like one thing that I was doing last year while I was at the peak of like my business in school, before I go to bed, I was writing down things that I was grateful for. I was writing down things that are keeping me happy. I really remind myself what keeps me happy, what the end goal is. Like for me personally, my end goal, I want to work in sports. I want to be training professional athletes. I want to be in that field. That's my end goal. And I know that if I'm putting in the work now, if I'm putting in the effort now, that one day I will achieve it. One day I will have that. And I find there's a beauty in the struggle. There's a beauty in the process. Once you succeed the goal, I find very first thing on my mind, okay, what's next? And I find there's a beauty in the struggle. I don't know, like I find working towards something, I love it. Me personally, I love training. I love working. I love studying. I love the grind. And I know it's not for everybody, but you have to tell yourself that there's a purpose for this. You are meant to be doing this, that there's reasons why you're doing this. You're on the right path. You just have to constantly tell yourself that.
Okay, so this is really, I like this too. So then the question is, why do you think it's valuable to improve your emotion? Because you're talking about having a gratitude list and thinking of, imagining where you'll be in the long run, right? So why is that so important, do you think?
For me personally, I'm a forward thinker. I always think forward. I always think in the future. Very often do I dwell in the past. I'm always thinking what's next, what's better for the future. And that's really like, I feel like you just have to be optimistic in order to live like a fulfilled life. Like, I know it's hard, especially right now with COVID. It
Yeah,
is hard, 100%.
yeah,
But it's just one of those things. You just have to like, the more you say it, the more your mind believes it's true. If you constantly tell yourself something, you're gonna believe it's true.
yeah,
That's the reality of it. So it's one of those things. It's like you know what you're doing, but if you keep doing it, it's gonna work, kind of thing.
yeah, and
It's just it's tough
yeah.
to describe it, to be honest. But
I think basically what you're describing here is that whole mindset piece, right? Like
yeah,
when you go into a situation and you are feeling negative and pessimistic, in a way, what's happening is your mindset is at a lower level, right?
mhm,
So when you have a lower level mindset, or I call it, let's say, an unhealthy mindset, it becomes very difficult to find a solution to your problem, right?
100%.
So when you're writing gratitude lists and you're thinking of all these good things that could happen, what you've actually done is you've actually improved your level of thinking,
Mhm.
right? And then as a result of that, did you find that it became easier to come up with solutions to your problems and challenges and all that?
It did 100%. Like me constantly, I constantly think about how to solve problems right away. Like it happens fast for me. Like I'll sit there think for half an hour and then I'll think about would this work? Maybe yes. Let's try it out. I try it out. Okay, that didn't work. Let's take a step back. Let's see if this works. I'll try it out. Oh, that did work. Okay, maybe there's little errors here and there. Oh, I can fix it here. I can fix it there. That's constantly how my mind works. I always think about finding solutions, finding better ways. Take a step back. Take a step forward. Finding what works best. I
So
constantly tell myself that like I know I have what it takes to be successful in whatever I do. I tell myself I will be successful. I never think maybe I will be, maybe things will happen. I know that no matter what gets thrown at me, I will be able to find solutions. I will be able to do this. I never think anything less.
yeah, so this is one of the reasons I want to interview you, because one of the things that I think that helped you be successful was exactly what you just said. And that is, you're always thinking that you can figure things out. You're always thinking you can solve the problem. You're always thinking of pretty much how successful you're going to be, right?
Mhm.
And so that is, for me, that's really the juice of the whole conversation, in my opinion, right now. So how do you, what would you tell someone? Like, there's a lot of students out there that are like, I'm not smart. I don't have what it takes. I just, I'm not capable. There's a lot of students who think like that. So what would you
Mhm.
tell them?
I would say find someone who has achieved what you want to achieve and see what they did. Or find someone who has found success and see what they did. Like for me personally, that person's my sister. My sister is the most successful person I know. Like she's worked at NATO, she's worked at the United Nations, she's self-made millionaire straight up. And like for me, that's my motivation. She like watching what she does on a daily basis, talking to her, that keeps me going. Like I try to be everything I can be like my sister because she does everything that essentially you teach. Like
Yeah.
she didn't like do your class or whatever, but she figured it out herself. And for me, that's what keeps me going. Like I talk to my sister all the time about like what I'm doing, like how I can do better, and like I help her out as well. And it doesn't necessarily have to be someone you're related to. Like I also have role models that I follow online, other role models that like athletes, such as there's lots of people that I look at and see what they do, and I kind of try to mimic those people. And like from a combination watching my sister, athletes, even like some politicians I follow, like influential figures, I watch all these people and kind of figure out what works for them, what works for them, and try out these different things and really find what works best for me. And knowing that they could do it, I could do it as well.
Yeah, so that's brilliant, because one of the things that's very important is the company you keep, right? And
Yeah,
so what happens is a lot of students who are bright and intelligent, their environment is it sucks, right? So what happens is their environment sucks and their mindset kind of gets corroded. Whereas with what you've done is you've actually taken these concepts that we talked about in class and you've actually gone ahead and build that strong environment around you. And as a result of that, when you have a challenge, you're now very optimistic and you're very confident that you can solve your challenges, right? So
100%.
yeah, so that's, I think, very, very important that we let students know about. So I'm going to try and delve a little bit deeper on this one.
Sure.
Let's say I was a student who just didn't believe in myself. Like, there's a lot of students when I tell them, hey, you can get a 4.0 grade point average, and they just like laugh. They're like, there's no way. Like, I can't do it. I'm not built that way. I'm not made like that. What if I was one of those students? What would you tell me?
Anything's possible, straight up. Everybody starts from somewhere. If you think about when you were born, you knew nothing. You knew absolutely nothing. And look how far you've come now that you're actually in university. You've learned all this stuff so far. Why not keep going? Like the possibilities that the human can do is endless. Like look at like how far athletes go. Like you look at these stories like big one like since the NBA finals just a couple days ago, Jimmy Butler. He was homeless growing up and now he's in the NBA finals. Like he worked every single day. He was a second round draft pick, 0-star recruit. He did it. And everyone told him he couldn't do it, but he did it. And if you look at like for someone like him, I know he constantly told himself, I'm the best. I can do this. There's nothing I can't do. Just constantly tell yourself that over and over and over again and find little goals. You look at like the big picture, but then you make little goals to get there, like little ladders. Get one goal, it feels good. You achieved it, right? You start small. I want to do that again. You do it again. You do it again. One thing leads after another. It builds. It's like going to the gym. You're not going to get shredded after one day. You need to keep going every single day. You need to become a routine. For me, like success has become a routine. Like I wake up, I'm like, I have a routine set. I do this, I do this, I do this. Everything at the same time every day. It just becomes easy to me. Once it becomes a routine, it's just something that I have to do. And it becomes at that point, it's not even work anymore. It's just what I do.
Yeah, perfect. I love the way you explain that, because that really, that's everything that we talk about in our class. So before we get into one of your favorite topics, which is baseball, I wanted to ask you another one, and that is, you know, um, if so in the course that you took with me, there were some concepts that I taught, right? Was there anything that kind of really helped you to get to that next level? Was there
To be
any?
honest, it was just the whole drive of mindset. Like I always had the mindset. Like in high school, I was always going to the gym after school. I was always thinking about like what I want to do after high school. I was always thinking about like what I want, like success wise, what I want to be. But then it never really like the whole mindset aspect, it never really clicked to me. Like I always had it in me. Like when I was young, I was always first person in the batting cage, getting there early. I was always last one to leave. It was just who I was. That's just who I am as a person. But the whole mindset part never really clicked to me until I took your class and realized exactly what I'm doing and then how I can get even better at it. Because
So
it's like the mind controls everything. Like
yeah,
without your mind, you're nothing, straight
yeah,
up.
yeah. No, I heard.
And knowing once you realize what to do, it becomes easy. It really does.
Yeah, so that's great. So how would you define mindset then?
Mindset's just the way you perceive yourself, really. The way that it's just confidence, to be honest. When you break it down to it, it's confidence. Confidence is key with everything. If you believe you could do it, you could do it. Like your brain will naturally find ways to do it. But
Yeah,
you have to just have the mindset of thinking, I can do anything. And you just force it in your brain. Like there are times like I'll go to like spurts for like a week where like everything just crashes down. I feel like I can't do this. I'll just break down. But then I'll be like upset for a couple days. And after those couple days, I'll realize like I can't be thinking like this. I need to get better at myself. Like I'll use like example, like just recently I broke up with my girlfriend like a couple weeks ago. Obviously I was pretty down. But then after a couple weeks, I was like, man, this sucks being down like this. Like this is terrible. So as strangely enough, what really got me out of the funk was watching motivational videos. I started just watching motivational videos on YouTube, and that kind of got me to stop thinking about her. And I'm thinking like, I had all these goals and stuff that I still have in my life. Let's keep on doing it. Like I've been hitting the gym so hard. I've been finding new ways, even though I'm not in school right now for this semester. I've been doing my own research online. I've been looking at I'm actually helping my sister out with a project that she's working on. So I've found all these other things to keep improving myself, to kind of just like first off forget about her, but like second off be better for myself. And like that's really what I kind of with my whole life just makes me feel better. Like when I feel good about myself working on something, I feel good.
Yeah, and what's really ironic is that the better you make yourself, the more attractive you'll be for other people. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So that's actually really good. And a lot of times, and I think when we're young, when we break up with somebody or things don't go well, we just stay down for a while, right? Or we think we're losers, or we think we're failures or something, right? And what's interesting is that um, you actually took it as a way to motivate yourself. So that's really good. Right? Yeah. And if you can, and that's, I think, a good example of mindset, which is basically saying to yourself that, yeah, I hit a glitch, I hit a problem, but there's two ways to look at this thing, right? I can just say my life is over and life sucks, which many people do. Or you can say, hey, there's some value that I got from this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, yeah, I had a setback, but it doesn't mean that it has to be like this, right? Maybe I can find somebody better. Maybe I can have a better future. Maybe I can, and I think that type of thinking is really, it really exemplifies what it means to have a good mindset. So that's good that you explained it that way. Great.
Yeah.
So another thing I wanted to ask you was your passion was baseball, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do? And we had that talk, right? Like, I think we had that talk. You came into my office before COVID, right? And we had that talk. And what was the challenge that you had? And I'd like to find out exactly what we discussed, because I sort of remember. And then tell me what the results were after that.
So
I still
going, yeah. So going into the conversation, that was my first full year, like full-time coaching. Like before that, I did like kind of side jobs here and there, helped out here and there, but like nothing too serious. This was my first full year into it. Going into it, obviously COVID wasn't a thing yet, so I was expecting to go to the World Series for Team Canada with my team. Obviously, that did not happen because of COVID, but we still had a season like within the city, and really like with our program, like what we're known for is player development. Like that's our big thing above any other program in the city. We develop players more than any other program, like because we know what we're talking about, we know how to train, and I figured all my other coaches that I work with, they all have their own like stick. They all have their own little things. I figured, how can I be the best coach for the program that I can be? And then I know that I may not have been the most talented ball player as like the other coaches, but if I drive mindset into the kids, we get big things to happen. So during the season, we had 3 teams within our program all played against each other because we had the 50-person cohort rule within the city. So we really, team-wise, we were limited. We only were able to have 3 teams. So with my team, we started off pretty slow. We started off slow. The team kind of had a hard time clicking. But then like I kept telling them, like, you guys can do anything. Like I kept telling them, like, when you guys are at the plate, tell yourself, I'm better than the pitcher. I will get a hit this at bat. I will make solid contact. I will do this. I tell them before every game, after every game, tell yourself like what you will do. Like I am better than you, or like if you're pitching, I'm better than this hitter.
Yeah,
I will strike you out.
So basically, what you did, and sorry to interrupt here, but basically what you did is you actually set the mindset first.
Yep.
Before the action was taken.
Exactly. So I did it both pregame and postgame. So pregame, I told them like, okay, like last game, let's forget about that. That's in the past. We already learned from that. But this game is new. We're going to come with this mindset. We're going to win this game. Losing's not an option, straight up. And like we're really driving for us. Parents love it because it's 12 and under. So we're teaching them these morals, these values from a very young age. So this will carry over for them for the rest of their lives.
And so what
And
did
so
we
like,
go, so go
say,
ahead. I was just going to say, what did we talk about, like when you came into the office, into my office that day?
What we talked about, you talked about like how you organized your practices post game, pre game, how you got the players to essentially buy into what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think I used my volleyball team, right? Like I think I
It was the volleyball team, yeah.
that international team that I coached, right?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Okay.
So you basically like, I remember you were telling me pre-game you would be talking to the team and be like, yeah, like we are the underdogs here, but we could still win this 100%. If you look at it this way, you broke it down. You're like, well, we could get a few points here if we do this. We could prevent a few points here if we do this, and then it becomes realistic. Like, yeah, we could do this. And then what we kind of talked about, like training wise, let's say things didn't go well. And I used it myself for after every single game, after every single practice. I went to the team and I asked them like, "Hey guys, raise your hands. What do you think we could have improved on today?" The kids would raise like, "Oh, I missed a few ground balls, like kind of went under my glove, whatever." And I say, "Okay, well, how do you think you could have fixed that, and improved for next time?" And the kid would think, he'd be like, "Huh," and then he's like, "Well, I can like just take a bunch of ground balls and work on them." Like, yeah, that's a good idea. And I'm like, "How are you gonna take those ground balls? What are you gonna think about when you're taking those ground balls?" Then he'd think a little more. He's like, "Huh." I think if I just worked on getting my glove more out front and staying a little more lower, I think I'd be more successful at it. I'm like, perfect. So next practice, that's what you're going to do. You're going to be working on that. And then I go to the next player and be like, hey, what could we improve on? And then he'll say something too. And especially like after some games, if we played really bad, I'd make every single player on the team say something on what they could have done better and how they're going to get better at it.
Yeah.
And I'd
Perfect.
always end on a positive note as well. Like I wouldn't just be like, oh, we did all this wrong and then just leave it. I'd always be ending on a positive note. I'm like, yeah, we did all this wrong, but we can get better. We have it in us. I've seen, like, look at you, Nick, over there, let's say, like, you've come from this and look how far you've gone so far. Why not keep going? And then he'll think about it and be like, yeah, I can keep going. And my team personally, we had the hardest working team in the league. Like my team from the beginning to the end, it was like astronomical how much they improved compared to all the other teams.
Yeah. So that's what I was gonna ask you. So you basically took this whole concept of instilling mindset, just like I did with you guys in my class and on the sports teams. You know, a lot of coaches, what they do is they really focus on strategy, right? But what you did and what I try to do is instill the mindset, and the strategy naturally comes automatically, right?
100% does, yeah.
And so, which is really weird because people don't get it. They're like, no, we got to teach them strategy. But what's interesting is that when the mindset is there, the body and the mind naturally will teach the kid strategy automatically.
It does.
Right. So as a result of that, what kind of, and feel free to tell us, like, you know, people are watching this video, feel free to tell us, and we can do a shameless marketing plug. What, you know, where do you work and what's the name of the place? And then also tell us about the results that you get.
So the program is Cal Ripken, Alberta. It's 12 and unders baseball. Basically, how the program's structured, we have 4 coaches and we coach all the teams. So we have, because of COVID, we maximum 50 kids. In future, like without COVID, we'd have more kids. But we're competitive. Like we have actual tryouts to the program. Like we don't just take anybody. We actually have kids who actually want to be there. That's the biggest thing with
That's
us.
huge. Yeah, that's huge.
Exactly, right? And we really instill hard work. I guess I know, like you say, like hard work's not like you have to work smart, but we instill the kids of like knowing how to get the best results out of them. Like we don't accept anything less than the best that they could possibly do. And that's the big thing with us. Like parents, like after practices, after games, like let's say the kids weren't doing very well. Like we tell them like, hey guys, go for a run and come back. And for us, like we found like when we told them to go for a run, that gives them a second to like reset while they're running. Their brain's thinking like, oh man, we could have done these better. And then they come back and they always come back playing better. And we don't make them go like vigorous runs, just like a quick like 2-3 minute run, not even that much, right?
Yeah.
And for us, we found that's pretty big. Like that gives them time to like take a step back, think about it, because post practice, we're constantly driving mindset like, hey, how can we improve? How can we get better? So we have gone to such a point that like come mid season, the kids are kind of doing it themselves.
Excellent.
And more on with the program though, like normal circumstances, we have our A team that represents Canada at the Ripken World Series in Branson, Missouri. We have like professional coaches it really is like the best program you could find in Calgary for 12 and under.
Perfect. And what kind of results have you been getting since you've been applying these principles?
Well, with our program, we're sending, I think, 7 kids to the Okotoks Dogs, which, if you don't know the Okotoks Dogs, it's basically the #3 program in all of North America.
Wow.
So we sent 7 kids to the Okotoks Dogs that graduated out of our program. Other kids go to a lot of top programs as well. Like, for example, Mike Soroka, he's currently in the MLB. He played in this program when he was a kid.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
he went all the way to the MLB, and he almost won Rookie of the Year last year. The guy's a stud.
Wow.
So like we have a track record of development and actually giving the kids the best start off from baseball that you could possibly have. Like I wish I had that when I was younger.
Yeah.
I would be so much better as a baseball player if I had this when I was younger. I wish I had it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Cool. Yeah. So I think for me, that's pretty much it. I'm just gonna leave it up to you. Is there anything else that you wanted to like summarize with, or is there anything else you wanted to say or anything?
Biggest thing, like just to kind of summarize mindset and success is always be thinking in the future, always be thinking about how things can be better. Don't be complacent. Um, One big thing with like Kobe Bryant passed away tragically a couple months ago. He had his Mamba mentality. He was always thinking, I could be better. I could be better. Let's keep working. Of course, like Kobe Bryant probably took it a little bit too far. Like he overworked himself definitely. But the moral is that like if you want something, your brain's gonna find ways to get it. But
Yeah.
you have to really find what you want and tell yourself that you're able to do it. Find role models, find ways of looking at things that resonate for you. Like for some people, like making schedules might not work for them. I know that's something that might not work for everybody. For me, that works, but it works different for everybody. But you have constantly have to have the trial and error mindset of let's see what works. If something doesn't work, don't dwell on it. Just throw it away, get something else, right?
Yeah.
Always think positively about yourself. If you keep thinking positively, positive things will happen.
Yeah. And
And
everybody.
that's really big. What you
Yeah.
bring into the world comes back at you.
Yeah, and that's, I was reading a quote the other day, and two things. One thing actually that I think is important is that everybody's built differently, right? So a lot of times students will be given strategies to succeed, or not just students, but people, and it doesn't work for them. And then if it doesn't work for them, then they think that they're failures. But it's not that. It's just because everybody's built in a different way, right? So if something works for you, then it doesn't mean it'll work for somebody else. And if something works for somebody else, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. The key is you got to find out what works. So that's good. And I like that you mentioned that. But there was a really important quote, a really awesome quote. And hopefully I don't butcher it, but it was something like, your reality is the mirror of how you view yourself.
Oh, 100%. I believe that. Yeah, it
Right.
really is.
So when you're looking at a mirror and you look back at that mirror, sorry, it's like looking in a mirror, right? If you, instead of looking in a mirror, if you look at your world around you, that's actually a reflection of how you view yourself. So, and you can, and it's like your world is your mirror. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say here, right? So I think that's
Yeah.
important. So that's good, man. Good.
Yeah.
So yeah, so thanks. Just 1 second here. All right, so yeah, so we're good to go. So I'm just gonna
Perfect.
stop. I'm just gonna stop it now. But hang on,
All right.
we'll chat a little bit later on. 1 sec.